Before the light, there is the smell. It comes up off the water first, cold mud and salt and rot, and something older than either, the smell of a thing that has been swallowing the leavings of London for 1,000 years. And tonight, in the black hour before dawn, it is beginning, quietly, to give them back. Because the tide is going out, and when the Thames goes out, it does a thing no other hour of the day allows. It uncovers the lost world of the city and lays it in the mud at your feet. You feel it before you see it, the pull of the cold at your bare feet, and your feet are bare because a pair of boots is 4 shillings, and 4 shillings is 2 weeks of what you earn, and the mud takes boots anyway. The suck of it closing over your ankles, soft as something living. And you hear it, the long withdrawing hiss of the water drawing down the stairs and over the stones, uncovering, inch by inch, the wide gray flats that were under 6 feet of river an hour ago, and will be again before the city is properly awake. You are 10 years old. You have no shoes, no lamp, and no one waiting. The water gives you 4 hours, from the turn of the tide to the first full light, and in those 4 hours you must find in the mud enough coal and rope and nail and bone to come to a few pennies, because a few pennies is the difference between a bed tonight and the stairs. And here is the strange law of this place, the one you have learned in your bones before you ever learned your letters. The river is richest when it is emptiest. It gives only when it leaves. The lost world comes up to meet you only in the hour the whole city is asleep and gone, so that everything down here is yours, completely yours, for exactly as long as no one else is awake to want it. In the 4 hours before London wakes, the river belongs to you, and you belong to no one.
Hello, and welcome back to History for Sleepyheads, the place where history isn't shouted at you, but laid down quietly beside you, so you can let it carry you off to sleep. Tonight, we're going down to the water. We're going to spend one dawn on the foreshore of the Thames as a mudlark, one of the real children, some as young as 8, who in the cold hours before the city stirred, walked out into the river's mud to gather what the water gave up: a lump of coal, a length of rope, a nail, a bone, and, if the tide was kind, a coin still warm from no hand at all. A good morning might earn 3 pence. A bad one earned wet feet and nothing. We'll learn what the mud keeps and what it hides, and the one thing down there you must never take. We'll meet the others on the stairs, and we'll come slowly to understand that strange law of the river, that it is richest when it is emptiest, and that everything down here was someone's once, which is the only history the mud keeps. There's nothing for you to do now but get comfortable. If this channel helps you find your way to sleep, you're welcome to subscribe and follow along. It's a quiet way to help these stories reach others who are lying awake too. But there's no hurry in that, and no hurry in anything tonight. So settle in. Let your eyes close when they're ready. The tide is going out, and the lost world is coming up to meet you. And we have 4 hours.
There is a thing the river does that no one above the stairs ever sees, and it is the first thing you ever understood about the world. It happens twice a day, and it asks no one's leave, and it makes you, for 4 hours, the richest person in London. By day, the Thames is a road,
barges and coal lighters, the watermen calling, the bridges loud with carts, and by day it belongs to all of them. But the day river is only the top of it. Underneath the road there is another river, slower and older, and that is the one you work, the one that shows itself only when the bright one draws back and leaves it lying bare. You have learned its hours the way other children learn their prayers. The tide slides forward near an hour each day, patient as a clock that keeps its own time and not the city's, and you carry that clock in your body without ever having been taught it. You wake before you rise, knowing almost to the half hour when the water will turn, and when the long hiss begins and the water starts down the stairs, you are already moving, because the country it uncovers does not stay uncovered long. Here is the strange law, the one you knew in your bones before you knew your letters. The river is richest when it is emptiest. It makes no sense said aloud, and perfect sense lived. When the water is high and brimming to the wharves, it gives you nothing. It hides everything 6 feet down where no child's hand can reach. It is only when the river leaves, when it pulls out and lies low and gray, a wide flat waste that any passing gentleman would call desolate, that it becomes to you the richest place in the city. The wealth is in the withdrawal. The river gives you only what it has finished with, and it has finished with nothing while the water is high. It lets go only as it goes. And it does give. You can count it, because you have counted it every dawn of your remembering. A good morning is coal, the round sea coal that drops from the barges and rolls into the mud, and which the rag shop will weigh and pay a penny, sometimes 3, for a sack of. A good morning is rope, copper, a handful of bent nails that the smith takes by weight. A good morning is bone even, the river gives up bone, and bone is money, a farthing the pound to the man who boils it. None of it is treasure. All of it is survival, reckoned in pennies and farthings against the one number that matters, that a bed in a lodging is 4 pence, and a child with 3 pence is a child who sleeps on the stairs. You do not work the river for wonder. You work it because the mud, on a fair tide, comes to 4 pence, and 4 pence is the difference between a roof and a doorway. So you go down. You go down the green, slick stairs in the dark, one hand on the cold stone, your bare feet finding the step you cannot see, and you step off the last one into the mud, and the mud takes you to the ankle, soft and cold and closing, soft as something living. And the law is true again, exactly as it was yesterday. The place the fine ladies hold their handkerchiefs against, the low, ugly, stinking river at its worst, is the river at its most generous, laid open and waiting, and not one of the warm sleepers in the houses behind the banks knows it is there, and not one of them would stoop for it if they did. That is the first half of the law. There is a second half, and it keeps you humble, and it comes in as surely as the first goes out. You own the river only while no one else is awake to want it. For the wealth is not only in the withdrawal, it is in the hour. The river bears itself in daylight too, every ebb, but the daylight foreshore belongs to the coal heavers and the lightermen and the watermen with boots and barges and the right to be there. In the day they would cuff you off the stairs, call you thief, set you running. There is only one ebb no one contests, the one that falls in the black hours before the city wakes, between the turn of the tide and the first gray of light, when the men are still asleep and the boats still tied. That is your hour. Not because you are strong enough to hold the river against anyone. You are 10, and you could hold nothing against anyone. But because, for those 4 hours, there is no one to hold it against. The river is yours by default.
It is yours because the world has, briefly, let go of it. And the moment the world wakes and reaches for it again, the first cart on the bridge, the first waterman down to his boat, the first full light, it is taken from you, completely, as if it had never been yours.
So you live, every dawn, inside a wealth that is total and a wealth that is borrowed, both at once. You are for 4 hours the sole owner of the floor of London, and you are the whole 4 hours on loan. The richness and the poverty are one fact seen from two sides. You possess everything precisely because you are no one. The moment you would be someone, someone seen, someone with a right, someone the city has woken to notice, you would possess nothing. Your wealth depends entirely on your invisibility. The instant the city opens its eyes, the country at your feet rolls up, the water comes in to take it, and you are a barefoot child with a knotted rag of coal, climbing the stairs against the first of the men coming down. You have thought about this in the way a child thinks, not in words, but in something underneath words, held in the feet and the hands and the long, cold patience of the work. The river loves me only in the dark. The river is kind to me only because no one is looking. And you have understood, without ever being able to say it, that these are not two things, but one, that the kindness and the dark are the same, that the only river that would ever give a child anything is a river no one else is watching. A river in daylight belongs to grown men. A river in the dark belongs to you. And you would not trade your dark river for all their bright one, because the bright one, for all its boats and importance, gives a mudlark nothing, and the dark one gives you everything you have. It is cold, the dark river. You should say that plainly because it is true, and because the wealth is not the warm kind. The mud is cold past feeling, and then cold in a way that goes up through the feeling into the bone. And the wind off the bared flats has nothing to stop it, and goes through whatever you were wearing as though you wore nothing at all. The richest place in London is also among the coldest, and you have never once been down on the foreshore and been warm. But the cold and the wealth go together, the way the dark and the kindness do. The warm sleepers gave up the river precisely because it is cold and low and stinking, and theirs only at hours no comfortable person would keep. They left it lying because it cost too much to take. And the cost is exactly what makes it yours. Everything you own because it was too cold and too dark and too early for anyone else to want it. You are rich in the leavings of people who would not stoop.
And then your hand finds the first one. You are not even looking yet, not properly. You are only down, only settling into the cold, your eyes still learning the gray. And your fingers, working the mud near the stair, close on something round and hard and heavier than coal. You bring it up. You wipe the mud with your thumb. And in the first gray light you see the dull, blunt edge of it, the worn round of a thing that was money once, a coin so old and so smoothed that no one will ever read its face again. Given up by the river, finished with, laid in the mud for a barefoot child to find in the hour no one is awake. It is not warm. The river's coins never are, not really. That is a thing you tell yourself in the cold, a coin warm from no hand at all, the small lie that keeps you going. It is cold as the mud it came from, but it is yours. For 4 hours, in the dark, before London wakes, it is yours, and you belong to no one.
The mud keeps everything, and it keeps it for a reason no one ever taught you, but which you have understood since you were small enough to be carried down to the stairs on someone's hip. It keeps because it does not breathe. That is the whole of it.
though you do not have the word. The things that rot in the open air, the leather, the wood, the cloth, rot because the air gets at them, and the air is full of small hungers that eat a thing back to nothing. But the river mud is not air. It is thick and black and close and airless, and it closes over a thing the way the tide closes over the flats. And once it has closed, there is no hunger left inside it to do the eating. So the thing lies. It lies in the black and the cold with no air to spoil it, and the years go over the top of it like tides, and it does not change. The mud keeps a thing the way a miser keeps a coin, not to use, not to spend, only to hold in the dark against a day that may never come. And then one ebb, for no reason, with no warning, the river shifts its weight, and the mud lets a little of its hoard slide loose, and pushes it up into the gray light, at the feet of a barefoot child standing in the right cold yard of nothing, at the right hour of the dark. You have brought up things that have no business being whole. A shoe, a single small shoe, a child's, the leather soft and dark and perfect, the little stitches still in it, a shoe that some other child wore and lost in the water before your grandmother was born, and which the mud kept so well you could have laced it onto your own foot if it had fit. You have brought up a clay pipe, the long white stem of it snapped short the way they always snap, the bowl no bigger than a thimble, and pressed into the side of the bowl the print of a maker's thumb, a man's thumb, the lines of it still in the baked clay, a man who sat somewhere with the wet clay in his hand 100 years ago and pressed it just so, and is gone, entirely gone, every part of him gone, except the print of his thumb that the mud kept. And then there are the things you cannot name at all.
That is the part no one warns you of. You think, when you are small, that the river gives up only the things you know, shoes and pipes and coins, the worn ordinary furniture of people's lives. But the longer you work the flats, the more the mud hands you things that stop you cold because you turn them over in the gray light and you have no word for them. You have in your rag at this moment such a thing, a piece of iron the length of your hand, heavy, cold, shaped, deliberately shaped. You can see that someone made it on purpose, someone heated it and beat it and bent it just so. But shaped for what, you cannot begin to say. It has a loop at one end and a kind of flattened tooth at the other, and a twist in the middle that means something to somebody once, that meant it should be exactly this shape and no other. It was important. You can feel that it was important the way you can feel weather coming. It did a job, a particular job, every day, in some hand, in some trade you have never heard the name of. And the job is gone. The trade is gone, the hand is gone, and the word for the thing went with them. So you hold a thing that is unmistakably for something, and the something has vanished off the face of the earth, and you will carry it up the stairs, and the ragman will not know it either, and he will weigh it as plain iron and give you a farthing, and the question of what it was will go back into the dark unanswered, the way it came up. That is the deepest thing the mud keeps, not the object, the not knowing. And under all of it, the one you keep coming back to is the key. You found it 3 tides ago, and you have not sold it, though it is good iron and would weigh to a halfpenny, and you cannot fully say why you have not.
A heavy iron key, longer than your hand, the teeth of it strange and particular, cut to fit one lock and one lock only. A lock that is certainly gone, in a house that is certainly gone, so that the key opens nothing now and never will again. And yet it was made with such care, such exact attention to a thing that mattered enormously to someone, that holding it, you feel the whole weight of how much it once meant and how completely that meaning has drained out of it. You keep it in the seam of your coat where the lining has come, and your thumb finds it through the cloth 12 times a tide, and each time you think the same thing without words. Somebody locked something with this and meant to come back. The mud kept the key. It did not keep the lock, or the door, or the house, or the hand that turned it. It kept the key and gave it to you, and the key keeps its secret, which is that it had one, and that the secret is lost.
This is the thing about what the mud keeps. It keeps the object and loses the story. Always, every time. It will hand you a shoe and keep from you the child. It will hand you a pipe and keep from you the man. It will hand you a wedding ring. You found one once, a thin, worn band of gold so light it weighed nothing in your palm, and keep from you the marriage, the two people, the day it was put on, whether it slipped from a hand or was flung from one. The ring you can hold. The ring is real, is gold, will buy you a fortnight of beds from the right man who asks no questions. But the marriage the ring stood for is gone past any finding, and the mud that kept the gold so faithfully kept not one whisper of the love. That is the bargain the foreshore makes with you every dawn. It is generous with things and miserly with stories. It makes you rich in objects and poor in knowing. And you have learned not to ask the river for the story, because the river does not have it. The river only has the thing. And so you have grown a strange double feeling toward everything you lift, and it is the nearest thing you have to a religion. You are glad of the thing, the coal that is a penny, the nail that is a farthing, the ring that is a fortnight's roof. Glad the plain, hungry way a cold child is glad of anything that means a bed. But under the gladness there is the other feeling, the one you cannot name, the one that comes when you turn a found thing over and understand that it was someone's once. Everything down here was someone's once. The shoe was on a foot, the pipe was in a mouth, the ring was on a hand, the key was in a lock someone meant to open again. Not one of these things grew in the mud. Every single one was made by a person and used by a person and lost, and then kept by the mud in the dark for years past counting, and then given to you. You are not finding treasure. You are finding the leavings of the dead. The whole foreshore is a drawer the river fills with the small kept belongings of everyone who ever lived along it, and twice a day it slides the drawer open in the dark and lets you take what you can carry before it slides shut again. Everything down here was someone's once. That is the only history the mud keeps.
You used to be frightened of it when you were smaller. The thought that you walked every dawn on the floor of a place that had swallowed so much, that the things coming up under your feet had outlived everyone who ever touched them. But the fright wore into something else, the way frights do when you live inside them long enough. It wore into a kind of company, because you are alone on the foreshore in the dark, truly alone, the city asleep, and no living soul within calling, and yet you are not alone at all, because the mud is crowded. It is crowded with the small kept things of all the gone people, pressing up around your ankles, asking nothing, only there, the shoe and the pipe, and the nameless iron and the key and the ring, the whole patient horde of them.
and you have come to feel you are working in company, the company of everyone who was ever here, none of them present, and all of them somehow near, kept the way the mud keeps things, close and cold and lasting. You were the only one breathing on the whole gray flat, but you are not the only one there. And there is a thing you do, a small private thing you have never told anyone because there is no one to tell, and it is the closest you come to a prayer. When the mud gives you something whole, a shoe, the gold ring, the key you cannot put down, you hold it a moment before it goes into the rag. You hold it, and you do not think anything in words, but the not thinking goes something like, I have got you. You are not lost anymore. Someone has got you. As though the thing had waited in the dark all that time, not to be found and sold, but only to be held again, once by a living hand, before it went on to whatever was next. It is a foolish thing. You know it is foolish in the part of you that counts pennies and reckons beds. The ring does not care whose hand holds it. The mud does not care. But you do it anyway, every time, the small holding before the selling. And you think, though you could never say it, that perhaps it is the only wage the dead ever get for all the things they leave behind, that once, before it is weighed and sold and gone, a cold child stood in the dark and held the thing they lost, and was, for that one moment, glad of them. Then most of it goes into the rag, the coal and the nail and the bone and the nameless iron, all together, no difference between them now, all of it weight, all of it pennies. But not the key. The key goes back into the seam of your coat, against your side, where your thumb can find it. Because some things the mud keeps, and some things, now, you keep. And you move on across the flat, bent, searching, your feet reading the cold, your eyes reading the gray, taking what the river has finished with, holding each thing once, letting most things go, while the tide, far out, gathers itself in the dark and begins, so slowly you cannot feel it yet, to think about coming back.
You have told yourself a lie for so long that it has worn smooth, the way the river wears a thing smooth, and like a river-worn thing, you have stopped being able to feel its edges. The lie is small. The lie is this, that a coin, when the mud first gives it up, is warm. You know it is not true. The mud is cold, cold past feeling, and then cold into the bone, and everything it gives you comes cold. The coal, the nail, the bone, the gold ring that weighed nothing, all of it cold as the black it lay in. A coin is no different. A coin comes up cold as a stone in a winter gutter. And yet every time your fingers close on that particular round hardness in the mud, heavier than coal, smaller than your palm, you tell yourself, in the half-second before you bring it to the light, this one is warm. A coin warmed from no hand at all. You have said it 10,000 times in the cold, and it is a lie every time. And you go on saying it, because the lie is not really about the coin. It is about your father. You do not think of him on purpose. Thinking of him on purpose is a thing you learned, very young, not to do. The way you learned not to put your bare foot down where the mud goes suddenly soft and dark and deep. But he comes up anyway, the way the things in the mud come up, without warning, pushed loose by some shift you cannot feel. And he comes up most often around a coin, because the last clear thing you have of him is a coin in his hand, and his hand around yours. You can still set the size of it. A worn shilling, and your whole fist did not cover it, and his one hand covered both the shilling and your fist together. That is the measure you have kept of him. Not his face. His face has gone the way the coin faces go, rubbed to a soft blank. The size of his hand around a shilling. That much the mud of your own head has kept.
He worked the river too.
That is the part the people up the stairs would never understand. That the river is not only the thing that gives, it is the thing that takes.
And it took him the ordinary way it takes men who work it, without drama, without a story, without leaving so much as a button behind. He was not a waterman. He had no license, no boat. He was the cold, wet half of another man's trade for a half of another man's wage. Coal work, mostly. 18 pence on a good day, nothing on a bad, and the bad days more than the good that last winter. And one black morning he went down to the stairs the way he went down every morning, before the light, and the river was high and fast and thick with a week of rain, and he did not come back up the stairs. There was no finding him. The river that keeps a clay pipe 100 years, that gives back a child's shoe soft and perfect, that river kept your father so completely it never gave back even the smallest part. Not a boot, not a cap, not a bone for the mud to push up some later dawn into the light. So you have no grave, no stone, no place, no day on a calendar that anyone marks. What you have is the river. The same water that feeds you took him and kept him and will not give him back. And you go down to it every dawn, down the same green stairs he went down, into the same cold he went into, and you work the floor of the thing that has your father somewhere in it, and you find coins, and you tell yourself the coins are warm. Because here is the thought that lives under the lie and gives it its shape, and you will say it plainly once in the quiet, and then let it lie back down, that the river is one water, that the mud you stand in is the same mud, joined and continuous, all the way down and all the way out to wherever the high water carried him, that a coin lying cold at your feet has lain in the same dark he lies in, kept by the same keeping, and that when your fingers close on it, you are reaching, in the only way the world allows, into the place that has him. The coin is the nearest you can come. It came up out of the dark that he is in, and so for the half-second before the light shows you it is only metal, the coin is warm, the one warm thing the cold river could ever hand you, because it has come from where he is, and where he is, you do not let yourself believe, is cold.
That is the whole of the lie. This one is warm. It means this one has been near him. It means he is not as cold as the rest of it. The river gives only what it is finished with. You have built your whole life on that law. And the one thing it has plainly not finished with, the one thing it will not give back, is him. So you go down. So you reach. So you tell the lie. You do not weep over it. Weeping is for people with time and a warm place to do it, and you have a rag to fill and 4 pence to find before the light, and grief that stops your hands is grief that puts you on the stairs tonight. So you carry him the way you carry the cold, without crying out, because crying out changes nothing, and the tide does not wait. And tonight the lie has teeth, because the coin in your hand is real and particular. It is the one from the stair, the worn disc the river gave you at the very start of the tide, that you wiped and could not read, and dropped in the rag and forgot in the working. Now, sorting the rag in the first gray before the climb, it has come back to your hand. It is old, older than any money you have been paid in, the face gone soft and blank, the edge worn round. It would not buy bread. And yet you sit with it on the cold stair longer than a child who counts pennies should sit with a thing she cannot sell, because of a thought, foolish, impossible, that you cannot put down, that he might have held it. Not likely. The coin is older than him, older than his father. It lay in the mud long before any of you. But the thought does not care about likely. He worked this water. He bent in this mud. His cold hands sorted these same cold things, and a coin is a coin, and the river is one water. It is not true.
You know it is not true the way you know the coin is not warm, and you hold it exactly the way the work taught you to hold things. I have got you. You are not lost anymore. Someone has got you. Except that this time you are not saying it to the dead stranger who lost the coin. This time, without meaning to, you are saying it to him. And you say it quietly, only inside, because there is no one on the whole gray flat to hear, and because the saying of it, quiet, is all the grave he has.
And the river does the thing it always does. It gives you the object and keeps the story. It gives you a coin and keeps the man. It will let you hold this blank, worn disk that may have touched his hand and will never, ever tell you whether it did. The same way it gave you the key and kept the lock, gave you the ring and kept the marriage. The mud is a perfect keeper of things and a perfect destroyer of knowing, and the cruelest thing it keeps from you is the one thing you would trade every coin in the rag to learn, where he is and whether it is cold, and whether anything of him is near enough to a single found object that just once the lie might be true. You will keep this one. You knew that the moment it came back to your hand, the way you knew you would keep the key. It goes into the seam of your coat beside the key, the lock that opens nothing, and the coin you cannot read, two things the river finished with for everyone but you, and your thumb will find them both, a dozen times a tide, through the worn lining, against your side. Together they are not worth a halfpenny. Together, they are more than everything else in the rag, because the rag is pennies, and pennies are a bed, and a bed is one more day, but the key and the coin are the two ends of the only question you have, whether a thing once lost can be, in any way at all, got back. The key says someone meant to come back. The coin says he might have been near. Neither says he was. Neither ever will. The gray is stronger now off the water, the first thin edge of the light that ends your hours and gives the river back to the men. Soon you will climb, soon the city will awake and reach for the water and take it from you, and you will be a barefoot child on the stairs with a rag of coal and two worthless things in your coat seam. But not yet. For now you sit on the cold stair with the unreadable coin closed in your hand. Warm, you tell yourself, warm, and you let yourself believe for one more half-second before the light makes it metal again that the warmth has come up out of the dark from somewhere near him, and that somewhere near him is somewhere you can still, by reaching into the cold every dawn of your life, almost touch.
There is a thing the river hides, and it is the one thing it does not want you to find. And on the dawn you find it, you learn the only law of the foreshore that was never about money. You have always known the river takes people. You know it the way you know your father, quietly, without saying it, a fact kept in the bone rather than the mouth. The water that gives up coal and rope and the soft-kept shoe is the same water that closes over men who go down the stairs in the high dark and do not come up. And the mud that keeps a clay pipe 100 years keeps them too, somewhere in its airless black. So you are not surprised this dawn, far out near the soft bottom of the ebb, when you understand, before you see anything, before there is anything to see, that you have come to a place where the river is keeping one of them. You feel it the way you feel the tide turn, a knowing that arrives in the body first. The cold goes a little quieter here, the mud lies a little stiller, and you stop, the way you would stop at the edge of a sleeping room, because some part of you older than 10 has already told the rest of you what this is. It is not what the stories make it. The boys who frighten the little ones at the stairs make it ghastly, white faces, reaching arms, a horror that grabs. It is not that. It is the opposite of that. It is the stillest thing you have ever stood beside, stiller than the flat, stiller than the windless air, a stillness so complete that it does not frighten you at all, but only asks you, somehow, to be still as well. The gray light is kind. It shows you very little. The long, low shape of a person the river has been keeping a long time, gone soft and dark and mostly back into the mud. More a quiet rise in the flat now than a body, the way an old grave is more a quiet rise in a churchyard than a man. You do not look hard. There is nothing in you that wants to look hard. You only stand, in the cold, beside the stillness, and feel the great quiet of it settle over you, like the quiet settles over the city in the deepest hour. And you understand that the company of the gone you have felt in the mud all these years, the shoe, the pipe, the key, has had all along a face you had simply not met yet, and that the meeting, now it has come, is not terrible. It is only very quiet, and very sad, and very old.
And then, in the soft gray, you see the one bright thing. A ring. A plain band, dull under a skin of river silt, on a hand the mud has nearly finished taking. The river gave you a ring once before. The thin, worn band that weighed nothing, that you sold for a fortnight of beds without a second thought, because it came up clean and alone with no hand attached, a thing the river had finished with. This is not that. This ring is still held, and the river, in showing it to you, is telling you plainly, in the only voice it has, that it has not finished with this one, that here is a thing still attached to its story, still belonging in the only way that can ever matter to the person who wore it. And here is the forbidden thing. Here is the one thing you must not take. You could. That is what makes it a law and not merely a fact, that you could and that no one would ever know. No one is watching. No one is ever watching. That is the whole of your trade. The ring would slide free. The cold and the water make these things slide, and it would weigh in your palm the way the other one weighed, and it would buy not a fortnight but a winter of beds, more money than your hands have held at one time in your whole life. The hand cannot stop you. The person cannot stop you. The river, which gives up everything to whoever is cold enough and early enough to take it, will not stop you. There is nothing in the whole gray world between you and a winter of warm nights except a thing inside yourself that has no name and no profit and no use, and that you have nonetheless never once in your life been able to put down. You do not take from the dead.
No one taught it to you in words. There was no one to teach you anything in words. But you have it as surely as you have the lie about the warm coin, and it comes from the same place, and it is the other side of the same thing. Because you of all the children on the river, you who go down every dawn into the water that has your father in it, you know what it is to have someone out there in the cold you cannot reach. You know what you would give for one living hand to have found him out in the high dark where he went, and to have not taken his cap, not taken his boots, not taken whatever was in his pockets that bad luck winter, to have instead only stopped and stood still in the cold the way you are standing still now, and given him the one thing the river never can, to be, for a moment, found by someone who was sorry. That is the whole of the law. You do not take from the dead because the dead are someone's father. The dead are someone's father, and somewhere a child is reaching into the cold every dawn, hoping a stranger was kind. So you do not take the ring. You leave the gold band on the still cold hand, a winter of beds left lying in the mud, and instead you give the only thing you have to give. You take off your own rag of a coat, the one with the key and the worn coin sewn into the seam, the only warm thing you own, and you lay it gently over the quiet rise in the flat, over the little the gray light shows, and you cover what the river has been keeping. It is not a grave.
You cannot give a grave. You are 10 and you have nothing. But you can give a covering and a moment of being still beside, and the 4 words you have given to every lost thing the river ever handed you, said now in the great quiet to the one it matters most for, said softly only inside, with your bare arms cold and the tide far out and the first gray coming up off the water. I have got you. You are not lost anymore. Someone has got you. And then, because the law has a second half, and the second half is the harder one, you decide, standing there, that you will tell. You will not keep it secret to keep the ring for yourself. When you climb the stairs into the waking city, you will find the one face that listens, the waterman who does not chase you, the old tosher who knows the river's dead the way you know its coins, and you will say where, and that there is a ring, and you will let it go to whatever rough kindness the rivermen keep for these things, a name found, if a name can be found, a quiet burial if it cannot, the ring sold perhaps by hands less starved than yours, to put the one it came from into ground that does not move twice a day. You will get nothing. You will climb up with your rag of coal and your 2 worthless kept things and a coat heavy now with river water, exactly as poor as you were, poorer, and you will not for one moment have considered doing otherwise, because the thing inside you that has no name is quieter than the cold and stronger than it, and it is, you understand now, standing in the gray, the truest part of your father the river left you. Not a button, not a bone, but the certainty of what he would have done, which is exactly what you have done.
The river hides its dead, you think. Or you would think if you had the words. You only feel it. Because there is a difference, even to the river, between a thing it has finished with and a person it has only taken. It flings its coal and its rope and its lost shoes up into the light for any cold child to gather. But the people it keeps deep, keeps soft, keeps for the quiet bottom of the ebb where only the most patient searcher ever goes, as though even the river means them to be let alone. And on the rare dawn it shows you one, it is not cruelty. It is something more like trust. It is the river handing a barefoot child a winter of warm nights on a cold, still hand, and waiting in the great quiet to see whether there is in her the one grace the river itself does not have, to leave a taken person their last belonging. You pick up your rag, you leave your coat. The tide far out has stopped its going and begun so slowly you cannot feel it to come back, and you must climb now ahead of it into the waking city to find the listening face and say the where. You go up the green stairs cold to the bone, with no coat and no profit, and a quiet in your chest too large for your ribs, and behind you the gray water creeps back up the flat toward the covered shape, gentle now, almost careful, coming to fold again over the one it should never have shown you. And you do not look back, because you have done the only thing a barefoot child could do, which is to have been, for one cold and quiet hour, the someone who was sorry.
You are alone on the foreshore, but you are never quite alone on the stairs. And the difference is the whole shape of your mornings. Down on the flat, in the 4 hours of the dark, the river belongs to you, and you belong to no one. But there are only so many ways down to the water, and so you meet the others at the worn steps, going down in the dark, coming up in the gray, passing on the green stones with a rag each and a night's cold between you. You do not work together. The river is not large enough to share, and what your hands gather is what another's did not. so you scatter the moment your feet find the mud. But you pass them at the stairs twice a day, and you have learned to read them the way you read the tide. Not their lives, which are nothing to you, but the small weather of them as it touches your own dawn. The thin grey boy they call Sprat is at the coal stretch by the moorings as he always is, and you give it a wide berth as you always do, because it is his, and he guards it with a low, steady meanness that is only hunger wearing a hard face. He cuffed you once for straying onto it years back, and you have not forgotten the lesson, which is the lesson the stairs teach about every other person on them. Keep to your own stretch. But you have not forgotten the other thing either. The black morning you came up empty with the cold in your chest, and a lump of his own coal was in your rag. And he had turned away before you could look at him, so that neither of you would have to call it anything. You do not know why he did it. You will never ask. You only carry it, the way you carry the cold, as a fact about how the stairs work. That the same boy can be a wall on a good day, and on a bad one, the only thing between you and an empty rag. The little one is on the near flat, the new one, smaller than you were when you began, with no name yet because she has not lasted long enough to earn one. You watch her sidelong, the way the older ones once watched you, and you see what she does not know, that she is working too close to where the mud goes soft and dark, and will take a child to the waist and hold her while the tide comes back. You do not call out. A warning shouted across the flat would frighten her off the river, and a frightened child is a careless one. So you make a note in yourself to walk her stretch with you once in the grey, pointing with your chin and not your mouth, because that is how it was shown to you by someone's face you no longer remember, and it is the only inheritance you have to pass on. You will not tell her about the soft places, you will show her. That is the only kind of telling the stairs trust. And it is the tosher you climb toward this dawn, because you have something that is his to carry now, and not yours.
You know him the way everyone knows him. Only that, the tosher, as though there were no other. And for the stairs, there is not. He has a lantern you do not have, and boots to the thigh you do not have. And he goes where you cannot, into the deep mud and the brick tunnels and the soft bottom of the ebb. He does not work your stretch. He works the places the river hides things. But he is the one face on the stairs that has never in all your life looked at you as a thing to chase off. And that is the only fact about him you need this morning. Because the law of the forbidden find has a second half, and the second half is telling, and there is only one person on the whole river you can tell. You find him at the top in the first grey, scraping silt from his lantern glass with his thumb. He looks at the place where your coat should be before he looks at your face, because he misses nothing. And your face tells him most of it before you speak. You say the where. You say there is a ring. You say you covered it, and you do not say with what, because he can see with what. And he listens. He listens all the way to the end, not waiting to speak, not weighing whether to believe, only taking the words and holding them carefully, the way you hold a found thing, because it was someone's. When you are done, he is quiet a moment. Then he says in a voice like the river over stones that you did right. You did right. And it undoes something in you that you did not know was held shut. You cannot remember the last time anyone said a thing to you that was not about coal or stretches or getting out of the way. You have to look hard at the lantern glass for a moment, because the quiet in your chest has tried to come up into your eyes, and you do not, on the stairs, in the grey, let it.
But it was said, a grown man with a lantern and the river's whole long memory in him looked at a barefoot girl with no coat and said, "You did right. And you will carry that too, the way you carry the cold and Sprat's lump of coal, as one of the few warm facts you own. He will see to the rest. That is understood without much saying. The burial, or the name, or whatever rough kindness the rivermen keep among themselves for the river's dead. It is out of your hands now, passed up to the one pair of hands old enough to carry it. You gave the dead the only thing a child could give, to be the one who was sorry and the one who told. He gives the rest, which is a man's work and not yours, because you must be back down on the flat tomorrow before the light, the same as every dawn."
And climbing past them all in the gray, past Sprat at his coal, past the nameless one who does not know the soft places yet, away from the tosher and his lantern going down toward the deep, you think that this is the nearest thing you have to a household. Not a family. You have learned not to reach for words that mean too much, but a household, a set of people bound to the same cold place by the same hunger, who do not love one another and would never say the word, and who nonetheless put coal in an empty rag and would show a new child the soft places and listen all the way to the end and say, "You did right." You belong to no one. That law does not change, but you belong to no one among others who belong to no one, and there is a kind of belonging in that, cold and sidelong and unspoken, that is the only kind the river allows, and the only kind you have ever had. The tide is coming in behind you now, gentle, almost careful, folding back over the flat and the soft places and the place you covered. The others are scattering off the top of the stairs into the waking city, each to whatever doorway 4 pence has bought, invisible again the moment the light is full. By midday you will all be gone. No household anyone would recognize, no names the warm world would know. But you will meet again at the turn of the next tide, in the dark, on the green stairs, going down. And that meeting, twice a day in the cold, without a word, is the whole of the company you have. It has to be enough. And this gray morning, with a man's 3 words still warm in your chest, it is, for once, almost more than enough. It is almost warm.
There are laws written down somewhere, in books you cannot read, in the offices of men who have never once stood in the mud. And then there is the law of the foreshore, which no one wrote and everyone keeps, and which is the only law that has ever applied to you. And the strange thing about it, the thing the warm city sleeping behind the banks would never believe, is that it works. It has no judge, no paper, no constable, no punishment but the cold itself, and 100 starving children keep it more faithfully than the rich keep their 1,000 written ones. The first law is the one the warm city would laugh at, that the river belongs to no one, and so what the river gives belongs to whoever lifts it. There is no owner of the cold that rolls off the barges into the mud, no owner of the rope that frays loose and sinks, the nail that works free of a rotting plank, the bone the water carries down from somewhere upstream. The moment a thing leaves the hand that held it and goes into the river, it stops being anyone's, and it stays no one's all the while it lies in the dark, and then it becomes, for the length of one ebb, the property of whatever cold child is patient enough and early enough to find it. Think how strange that is. A gentleman drops a sovereign in the street, and it is his still, and the law will hang a man for taking it. A barge drops a ton of coal in the river, and it is no one's at all, and the law does not care who gathers it, because the law has never once thought about the mud. You do not steal from the river,
You cannot. There is no stealing a thing that has no owner. And so you, who own nothing and are nothing, are the one creature in all of London who can never, by the act of gathering your supper, become a thief.
But the first law has an edge, and you cut yourself on it the dawn you found the ring on the hand. Because the law says the river's leavings belong to whoever lifts them. And here is the strangest rule of all, the one no lark could explain and no lark would ever break. A person the river has taken is not the river's leaving. The coal is given, you may keep it. The dead are taken, you must leave them. A gold ring lying loose in the mud is a fortnight of beds and yours by right. The same gold ring on a dead cold hand is untouchable, and a child starving to the bone will cover it and walk away. There is no court that made that rule. There is no book it is written in. It lives only in the hands of the poorest people in the city, who have the most reason of anyone alive to break it and never do. And that, you think, is the strangest law in all of London, the one kept best by the ones it costs the most. The second law is about the stretch, and it too would puzzle a man who owns things by paper. The river is not large enough to share, and so the foreshore divides itself without a word, without a line drawn anywhere, into the stretches each lark works. No one assigns them, no one could, there is no one with the authority. They settle the way water settles, by long use and small frictions, until everyone simply knows. Sprat's coal stretch by the moorings, the near flat where the new girl works, your own middle ground where the mud runs to fine silt and gives up the small things. There is no deed to a stretch, there is no rent. There is nothing but the long agreement of cold children, and yet a stretch is held as surely as any lord holds his park, held by knowing, kept by use, defended by a cuff that is not cruelty, but only the law correcting itself, the way the tide corrects the flat, putting the thing back where it belongs. And then there is the rag shop, where the law of the river meets the law of money, and the two are not the same law, and you have always known which one is colder. The rag shop opens at the gray edge of morning when the larks come up with their night's gathering, and the ragman weighs what you bring on a scale you are not allowed to read. That is the whole of his power, the scale and the reading of it. You bring coal, and he weighs it, and tells you what it comes to, and you take what he says, because there is no other shop, and no other scale, and no way for a child who cannot read to argue with a needle on a dial. A sack of sea coal, a good night's worth, comes to perhaps 3 pence. Rope by the weight, a penny. Copper, more when you find it, which is seldom. Bone, a farthing the pound to the man who boils it. Nails, a farthing for a fistful, almost nothing, but a farthing is a farthing, and you do not turn from it. You stand at the scale in the gray with your night's whole work reduced to a number you cannot check, and you take the coins, and you do the only sum that has ever mattered, against 4 pence, which is the price of a bed. That is the law beneath all the other laws, the one that does not care about the river, or the stretch, or the dead, the law of 4 pence. 4 pence is a bed in a lodging, a real bed, or the half of one shared with a stranger, with a roof over it, and a floor under it, and walls that keep the worst of the wind. 3 pence is the stairs. 3 pence is a doorway, a corner out of the wind if you can find one no one has claimed, a night spent upright, with your knees to your chest, and your rag of coal for a pillow. The whole of your night's work, every dawn, is the difference between 4 pence and 3 pence, between the bed and the doorway, between the roof and the wind. You do not work the river for wonder, and you do not work it for the dead, whatever the second law asks of you. You work it for the 1 penny that stands between a bed and a doorway, and most nights it is exactly that close, 1 penny, exactly the width of the ragman's scale on his scale. And here is the cruelty folded inside the law of money,
the strangest reversal of all, that the things worth the most are the things you must not sell. The gold ring on the dead hand would have been a winter of beds, and you left it, because the second law said leave it, and the second law is older and colder and truer than the fourpence law, though it feeds you nothing. The key sewn in your coat seam is good iron, and would weigh to a halfpenny, and you keep it, because some things now you keep. The worn coin beside it would not buy bread, and you keep that too, warm from no hand at all, for a reason that has nothing to do with the ragman's scale. The ragman hands you sometimes a thing that could change everything, and your law, the unwritten one, says that the things that could change everything are precisely the things you do not get to spend. The ragman would weigh the ring. The ragman weighs anything. But you are not the ragman, and the difference between you and him is the whole of what you have instead of money, a code that costs you and pays you nothing, and is the only wealth the scale can never measure. You have thought, standing at the scale in the gray, that the warm city behind the banks has its laws turned backwards from yours. Up there, from the little you have seen, the carriages, the lit windows, the men in good coats crossing the bridge above you with handkerchiefs to their faces. Up there, a thing belongs to whoever holds the paper that says it's theirs, and the more papers a man holds, the more the law loves him. And the dead leave wills, and the wills are law, and everything is owned, every stone and every coin and every inch of ground, owned and written and kept by the law for the ones who already have. Down here, there is none of that. Down here, nothing is owned and nothing is written, and the only law is the one each cold child keeps in herself, because the keeping is the last thing the river has taken. And you would not trade your lawless foreshore for their lawful city, because their law loves the ones who have, and yours, for all its cold, holds a single line the rich man's law has never once held, that what was taken you leave. The whole warm city would have taken the ring. You are the law that did not.
The tide is turning back now, far out, gentle and certain, coming to fold over the stretches and the soft places and the scale gray flat where you stood your night. Soon the rag shop will be the day's business, the larks gone, the foreshore handed back to the lawful men with their barges and their boots and their right to be there. You have your coins, the night's whole work, 3p or 4, the bed or the doorway, decided now by a number you could not read. And you have the things the law would not let you sell, the key and the coin against your side, worth more than the coins in your fist and convertible to nothing. You climb the green stairs in the gray with both kinds of wealth on you, the spendable and the unspendable, up into the waking city that owns everything and would never understand a child who owns nothing, and who would not, for a winter of beds, break the one law no one ever wrote down.
There is a rhythm to the hours in the mud, and once your body has found it, your mind is free to go elsewhere. And that is the secret of how a child survives a thing that should not be survivable. You stop being there in the part of you that suffers, and you leave only the part that bends. It begins the same way every dawn, before the dawn, in the last of the dark, and it begins with the river already going. That is the first thing you read when your feet find the flat. Not the cold comes second, but the water, far out and still falling, the long ebb only half spent, which tells you the whole shape of the night ahead before you have lifted a single thing. A falling tide is a promise. It means hours yet of widening mud, the river drawing back and back across the flat and laying bare, inch by patient inch, everything it has been keeping. You step off the last green stair into the cold, and you let the cold come up through your feet and into your ankles, and you do not fight it. That is the first thing the rhythm teaches. You do not fight the cold. Fighting the cold spends you, and you have nothing to spend. You let it in, you let it find its level, and after a while, not long, your feet stop reporting it, the way the ear stops hearing a sound that does not change, and then you are simply in the cold the way a fish is in the river, and it is no longer a thing happening to you, but only the water you move through. Then the bend. You bend from the waist, not the knees. The knees are for lifting, and you are not lifting yet. You are searching, and searching is done bent, the back curved, the eyes a foot from the mud, the hands loose and ready at the ends of your arms. You will be bent like this for the whole long fall of the tide. The first dawn a child works the river, she cannot do it. Her back gives out in an hour, and she straightens, gasping, and that straightening costs her the coal she did not gather while she stood. But the body learns. The back that screamed in the first month goes quiet in the third, and by now yours does not speak to you at all about the bend. It simply holds it, the long, low curve of the searching, hour on hour, while the rest of you goes wherever it goes.
And the hands do the work. This is the part no one could teach and everyone learns. The hands come to know the mud the way the feet know the stairs. A bare hand, half numb, drawn slow across the surface of the flat, can feel the difference between a stone and a coal before the eyes confirm it. The coal lighter for its size, edged where the stone is round. The hand learns the lump of a buried nail, the long line of sunk rope, the soft give that means nothing but mud, and the slight resistance that means a thing worth lifting just beneath. You do not dig with the eyes. The gray is too poor for the eyes most of the long ebb. The eyes are for later, for the sorting in the first light. In the dark, you read the flat with your hands, drawn flat and slow and patient across the cold, and your hands tell you where to close your fingers, and your fingers close, and the thing comes up. And you do not even look at it yet. You feel it, name it by feel, coal to the rag, stone back to the mud, and your hand is already moving to the next stretch of dark, while the first thing is still settling into the rag. There's a rinse to it, too. A found thing comes up clotted, and you do not carry the mud. Mud is weight, and weight is nothing at the scale. So each thing is dipped once in the nearest standing water, a swill of the wrist, a thing your hand does 10,000 times across the falling tide, without your mind attending to it at all. Lift, feel, name, rinse, rag. Lift, feel, name, rinse, rag. The 4 words are not words to you. They are a single motion broken into 4, the way a breath is one thing broken into in and out. And like a breath, you do not count them, you only do them, over and over, bent in the cold, while the water draws further out, and the gray comes up so slowly off the river that you could not say the moment it began. And here is where you go, because the body, once it has the rhythm, does not need you. The feet hold the cold, the back holds the bend, the hands do the lift, feel, name, rinse, rag without you. And so you are free in the only hours of your day that are wholly yours to go anywhere. Most often you go nowhere. You let the mind empty the way the flat empties as the water leaves it, until there is only the rhythm and the cold and the gray, and no gem in it at all. Only the bending and the gathering, a thing the river does to itself through you. That emptiness is the nearest thing to rest you ever get. It is better than sleep, almost, because in sleep the cold wakes you, and the hunger wakes you, and the fear of the soft places wakes you. But here, bent and working in the long fall of the ebb, the rhythm holds all of that at arm's length, and for whole stretches of the dark you are nothing at all, no hunger, no cold, no grief, only the slow, flat search of a hand across the mud and the small, clean weight of each found thing going into the rag.
And sometimes, in the emptiness, your thumb finds the seam of your coat. It is not a decision. The hands do it the way they do everything in the dark, without asking. The right hand pauses in its search, drifts to the side, finds through the worn lining the two hard shapes that live there. The long iron key that opens nothing, the worn coin you cannot read. Your thumb moves over them once, the cold iron and the cold disc, and something in you settles that has nothing to do with coal or beds. The key says someone meant to come back. The coin says he might have been near. You do not think the words. The words have worn as smooth as the coin, and they no longer need saying. The thumb finds the two shapes, and the settling happens, and the hand goes back to its searching, and the rhythm closes over the small pause, the way the tide closes over everything, and you are bending and gathering again, and the only sign that anything happened is that the emptiness is now a little less empty, a little warmer. Then the river changes under you, and you feel it before you could see it. The long falling is done. There comes the slack, the strange still minute when the water is neither going nor coming, when the river seems to hold its breath, a stillness under the stillness that reaches up through the soles of your feet, and you know without lifting your head that the half of your night is spent. The mud is at its widest now, the most of it bared it will ever be, the richest searching of the whole tide, and so you work the slack hardest, while the river hangs motionless and gives up the deepest of its leavings, the things the longest fall has uncovered. You do not hurry. Hurry is another way of spending what you do not have, but your hands move with a quiet certainty through the slack, gathering the best of it, because you know what comes next, and what comes next is the river taking it all back.
And then, so slow you cannot feel it begin, the turn, the water thinking about returning, and then returning, creeping up the flat toward you by inches in the gray. Now the night runs the other way. Every stretch you searched on the falling tide goes back under, gentle and certain. The river folding its widening mat closed again behind the advancing hedge of the water, and you work ahead of it, always ahead, gathering the last of the exposed flat before it is taken, retreating up the slope of the foreshore, step by slow step, as the river follows you home. The rhythm does not break. Lift, feel, name, rinse, rag, but it carries you upward now, toward the stairs, toward the gray that is no longer coming but arrived, until the creeping water laps at the toes of your search, and there is no more bared mud to read, and you straighten, finally, for the first time in hours, and your back tells you all at once everything it did not say while you worked. You stand in the full gray with your rag heavy and the river risen and the dawn up, and the hours in the mud are over, carried from the deep fall, through the still slack, to the rising turn, the whole night a single long current that bore you down into the work and back up out of it, and you never once caught it beginning, and never once caught it ending, and could not say, if anyone asked, where the long quiet of the falling tide stopped, and the long quiet of the morning began.
There was a tide before this one, before all of these, and you were not alone on it, and that is the thing you keep furthest down, in the deepest seam of yourself, where even your thumb does not go. You were small then, smaller than the nameless girl on the near flat, small enough that the green stairs were a danger to you and not a road.
And you did not work the river because you had a father who worked it, and a child with a father who works does not yet have to. That is the first thing the memory gives you, and it gives it the way the mud gives a coin, all at once and cold, that there was a time, real, not invented, when the river was his to go down into and not yours. You stayed at the top of the stairs. You were told to stay at the top of the stairs, and you stayed because his voice when he told you was not hard, but it was certain, and you understood even then that the certainty was a kind of love, that stay at the top meant the mud is mine to stand in, not yours, meant I go down into the cold so that you do not have to, though none of you had the words for it, and none of you would have said them if you had. You remember his hands more than his face. The face has gone. You have told yourself this already on the stairs with the coin. The face has worn to a soft blank the way the coin faces wear, and you have stopped being able to call it up whole. You get a piece of it, a line of a jaw, the dark of an eye, and then it slides back under before you can hold it. But the hands you keep, big hands, cracked across the knuckles and never quite clean. The river worked so deep into them that no washing took it out. And warm. That is the part the warm city would never understand about what you keep, that his hands were warm. In all that cold, on all those black mornings, the one warm thing in your whole small world was his two warm, cracked hands. And when he came up the stairs in the gray, with his own rag heavy and his own back bent from the bend, he would put one of those warm, cracked hands flat against the top of your head, just for a moment, just once, and the warmth of it would go down through you like the only sun you ever got. You did not know it was the thing you would spend the rest of your life trying to find again in the cold mud. You only knew it was warm, and that it was his, and that it meant he had come back up the stairs one more time.
And the shilling. You keep the shilling clearest of all, because it is the memory the warm coin reaches for every dawn. It was not your shilling, and it was not yours to keep. It was his whole day's wage on a good day, the coal work done and weighed and paid, and he would bring it up the stairs in his fist. And once, you do not know why this once and not the others, memory is the river and keeps what it keeps. Once he crouched down to you at the top of the stairs in the gray and opened his fist and showed you the shilling lying in his cracked warm palm. And he closed your small hand around it with his big one over the top, both of you holding the one coin, and he said something you have lost the words of, but kept the warmth of. Something about, this is what the river gives, this is what a day comes to. Hold it and feel the weight of a day. And you held it. Your whole fist did not cover the shilling, and his one hand covered both. And that is the measure you have kept of him when the face would not stay, not a likeness, but a weight, the weight of a day's coal in a child's hand, and a warm hand closed over it, and the certainty in a quiet voice that the river, hard as it was, would go on giving as long as he went on going down the stairs to ask it. He went on going down the stairs. That is the whole of the rest of it. And you tell it to yourself plainly in the deep seam, the way you told the warm coin lie plainly once, and then let it lie back down. He went on going down the stairs every black morning the way men of the river do, the cold, wet half of another man's trade for the half of another man's wage, 18 pence on a good day and nothing on a bad, and the bad more than the good that last winter. And you stayed at the top, because you were told to stay at the top,
and you watched the small, dark shape of him go down the green steps into the gray and the cold and the falling water, and you did not know, you could not have known, which of the mornings would be the one. It was a high morning. You have kept that, the one fact the river left you about the how, the water high and fast and thick with a week of rain, the ebb shorter and meaner than usual, the kind of tide the older men stand at the top of and shake their heads at and go down into it anyway, because 18 pence is 18 pence, and a child at the top of the stairs has to eat. He went down into it. He put his warm, cracked hand flat on the top of your head. You do not know if he did, in fact, that last morning. You cannot swear the memory is the true one, and not one you have built to keep, the way you built the warm coin. But you keep it as though he did, the last warmth, the flat of his palm, just once, just for a moment, and then the small dark shape going down the steps into the high gray water. And the water took him the ordinary way it takes them, without drama, without a story, without leaving you so much as a button to keep. The shape went down into the gray, and the gray closed over it, and it did not come back up the stairs. And you stood at the top where you had been told to stay, and you stayed, and you stayed, long past the gray turning to morning, long past the tide turning and rising and folding the flat closed, staying at the top of the stairs because it was the last thing he had told you and the only thing you had left of him to obey.
No one came up to tell you. That is the cruelty the warm city would never credit, that there was no one to come, no one whose work it was to climb the stairs to a small girl and say the words, because a waterman's man who drowns at the ebb is no one's loss to report, and the river keeps no register of the people it takes, the way it keeps no register of the coal. You worked it out yourself, slowly, the way a child works out a cold truth from the not coming back and the going hungry and the having finally to go down the green stairs you had been forbidden, down into the mud yourself, small, alone, because there was no longer a father to go down so that you did not have to. The day you first went down the stairs was the day that childhood ended, and the two things happened together and are the same thing. He stopped coming up, so you started going down. You have been going down ever since. You go down into the same cold he went into, on the same stairs, to ask the same hard river for the same 18 pence. And the river gives you coal and keeps your father, gives you coins and keeps the man, and every warm coin lie you have told yourself in all the years since is only the small girl at the top of the stairs, still staying where she was told, still waiting for the warm hand on the top of her head, still certain past all sense that the one who went down will, on some tide, come back up. You do not weep over it, even here, even in the deep seam. You learned that at the top of the stairs the first morning, and you have not unlearned it, that weeping changes no tide, brings no shape back up no green steps, fills no rag with coal against the 4-pence dark. So you keep him the only way the river allows anything to be kept, cold and whole and unspendable in the deepest seam of you, where the warm hand still rests one last time on the top of your head, and the shilling still has the weight of a whole day in it, and the small dark shape has not yet gone down into the high gray water, and you are not yet the one who has to go down instead. You keep him there. You will keep him there your whole life, the way the mud keeps the pipe
and the shoe and the key, airless and lasting, the one thing you have that the ragman's scale can never weigh and the cold can never take, because it is already as cold as it can be, and as warm, both at once, forever. The tide before this one, the last one he came up from, the last one you waited at the top of the stairs, and were not yet a mudlark, but only a child with a father, holding 1 shilling, warm.
The river is hard, and the city is harder, and the law of 4 pence is the hardest thing of all. And yet a day, even a day like yours, even the coldest and emptiest of them, will hold somewhere in it 3 small mercies, if you have learned how to take them, and you have. You learned it the way you learned everything, without words, in the body, over years. The warm city counts its blessings in the things it owns. You count yours in 3 small mercies a day, and 3 is enough, and 3 is plenty. And on the days the river gives even 3, you go to sleep, wherever sleep finds you, something close to grateful. The first mercy is warmth, and it is the smallest, and it comes most often where you do not look for it. It is not the warmth of a fire. You do not often have a fire. It is smaller than that, and because it is smaller, you have learned to feel it where the warm city, drowning in its hearths, would feel nothing at all. It is the warmth of the baker's wall. There is a baker on the lane above the stairs who fires his ovens in the black middle of the morning, when you are coming up off the flat with your rag and your coins, and the cold gone all the way into your bones, and the wall of his place, the back wall where the ovens sit against the brick, holds the heat of the firing and gives it slowly back to the lane all through the gray. You know the spot. Every lark knows the spot. You stand against the baker's wall for as long as you dare, your back flat to the warm brick, and you feel the heat come through your wet coat and into the cold knot of your spine. And it is not much, and it does not last, and it is the first mercy. You did not earn it. The baker does not give it. He does not know he gives it. The wall would warm the lane whether you stood against it or not. But you have learned to take a warmth that no one is giving, from a wall that does not know it warms you, and that is a skill the warm city will never need and never have, the skill of being warmed by the leavings of another man's fire, the way you are fed by the leavings of another man's river. You take the wall's warmth the way you take the river's coal, given by something that owns nothing, finished with, free. And you stand there in the gray with your back to the brick and your eyes half closed, and for as long as the heat lasts, you are not cold, and that is the first mercy, and it is enough. The second mercy is bread, and it is the middle one, and it is the one you most often have to buy with a penny you would rather have kept.
But sometimes, and these are the true mercies, the ones the day gives rather than sells, sometimes the bread is given. The baker whose wall warms you has a girl who carries the loaves, and the girl has, once or twice, on a black morning, set the loaf on the window-sill in a way that is not quite setting it down and not quite handing it to you, a loaf with a corner caught or a crust gone too dark to sell, left on the sill where a child coming up cold from the river might take it without either of you having to call it a gift. You take it the way Sprat's coal went into your rag, without looking at her, so that neither of you has to make it a thing that was given, because a thing given must be thanked, and a thanks is a kind of debt, and the girl is poor too, and does not want your debt, only wants, for reasons of her own that you will never ask, to put a dark loaf where a cold child will find it. You break the bread against the baker's wall, in the warmth, the first mercy and the second together, and you eat it slowly, because slow makes it last, and last makes it more,
and the warm new bread in the cold gray morning is a thing so plainly good that even you, who have learned to want nothing, will sometimes feel the wanting come up in you sharp and sudden at the taste of it, and you put the wanting down gently, the way you put everything down, and you only eat, and you are warm, and you are fed, and that is 2 of the 3. And the third mercy is rest, and it is the largest, and it is the one the whole long day bends toward. It comes at the end, when the coins are weighed and the bed is bought, 4 pence on a good night, the bed and not the doorway, and you climb the stair to the lodging and find your place in the dark among the others who have bought their 4 pence too, the bodies of strangers warm on either side of you in a way that you do not have to thank anyone for, because the warmth of a crowded room is no one's gift, and everyone's, like the wall, like the river. You lie down. That is the third mercy, and the whole of it, that there is, at the end of the cold and the bend and the 4 hours in the mud, a place to lie down. Not a soft place, the boards are hard and the straw is thin, and the cold gets in at the window, but a place where you may stop, where the back that held the bend all night may unbend, where the feet that read the cold stone may stop reading anything at all, where you may put down for a handful of hours the whole weight of being a thing that survives, the watching, the gathering, the keeping ahead of the tide, the staying out of the soft places, and simply lie in the dark among the breathing of strangers and be, for a little while, no one's and safe.
And it is here, in the third mercy, in the dark of the 4 pence room with the strangers breathing on either side, that your thumb goes one last time to the seam of your coat, the key, the coin, the cold iron and the cold disk that the river finished with for everyone but you. Your thumb moves over them in the dark the way it moves over them in the mud, without a decision, and the 2 small shapes of a last thing you feel before the sleep takes you. The key that says someone meant to come back, the coin that says he might have been near, and you do not think the words anymore. You have not thought the words in years. You only feel the 2 shapes under your thumb, and feel the settling come, the same settling that comes in the deep middle of the work, the emptiness going a little less empty, a little warmer. And somewhere under the settling, so far down you do not visit it, the small girl at the top of the stairs is still waiting for the warm hand on the top of her head, still certain the one who went down will come back up. And the certainty, foolish, impossible, worn as smooth as the coin, is the thing that lets you sleep. Not despair, the opposite of despair. The unkillable small certainty that a thing once lost can, on some tide, be got back, that the river that takes is the same river that gives, that what went into the dark may yet come up into the light. It is a lie. You know it is a lie. You have known since the top of the stairs that it is a lie, and you hold it anyway, under your thumb, in the dark, and it warms you the way the wall warms you, and the bread fills you, given by nothing, owned by no one, free, the third mercy folded inside the third mercy, the rest inside the rest.
3 small mercies. The warmth of a wall that does not know it warms you. The bread of a girl who will not let you thank her. The rest of a room full of strangers. And the 2 cold shapes under your thumb. The warm city would not count any of them. The warm city with its hearths and its loaves and its soft beds has so many warmths and breads and rests that it has stopped being able to feel a single one. The way a man beside a great fire stops feeling the fire. But you feel them.
That is the one wealth the fourpence law can never weigh, and the cold can never take. That you have been kept so cold and so empty and so long, that you can feel a warmth no one is giving, taste a bread no one will own, sink into a rest you had to buy with the whole of a day's bent labor. Feel each of them whole and sharp and entire. 3 small mercies in a hard day, and find that 3 is enough. 3 has always been enough. 3 is the number the day can spare you, and the number you have learned to need. And on the nights the day gives all 3, you lie down in the fourpence dark, with your thumb on the key and the coin, and your back finally unbent, and the strangers breathing warm beside you, and the cold held off at the window, and the river risen and quiet beyond the lane, and you go down into sleep the way you go down the green stairs, slowly, feet first, reading the dark, certain of the cold, and certain too, past all sense, that somewhere below it, somewhere at the bottom of the going down, there is a warmth that has been waiting for you all along. A warm, cracked hand that will rest, one more time, on the top of your head, and tell you, without words, that the river gives, and that you may stop now, and that you are not, after all and in spite of everything, lost.
There is a law you have kept your whole life without once turning it on yourself, and on the dawn you finally turn it, the river returns the only thing it ever could, and it is not the thing you spent your childhood waiting for, and it is, you find, enough. It begins like any dawn. You go down the green stairs with your feet reading the stone, off the last step onto the cold flat, into the long fall of the ebb, and your hand begins its slow, flat search across the mud in the dark. Lift, feel, name, rinse, rag, the rhythm closing over you the way it always does. But this dawn, the river has drawn back farther than you have seen it draw in years. A great spring ebb, the water gone far out, and the flat laid bare almost to the deep channel. Mud you have never stood on, uncovered, gray and gleaming in the last of the dark, and your feet carry you out across it, farther than you have ever worked, out toward the soft bottom where the river keeps the things it does not mean to give, out to where on another dawn you found a hand with a ring on it, and covered it with your coat, and left a winter of beds lying in the mud. You did not mean to come here. Your feet brought you, the way they bring you down the stairs, without asking. And you stand there, at the furthest edge of the bared flat, where the mud goes soft and dark, and the deep water breathes just beyond, and you understand, the way you understood the stillness that other dawn, a thing that has been waiting at the bottom of you your whole life for the river to draw back far enough to show it. Your father is here, not his body. The river gave that to the deep long ago, the way it gives everything to the deep, and you will never find it, and you stopped, years past, hoping to. But he is here, in the only way the taken are ever anywhere, in the cold, soft bottom of the ebb, where the river keeps the ones it took and did not finish with. You have walked above him every working dawn of your life without knowing the place, and the river, this once, this great spring ebb, has drawn itself back as far as it can, and bared the floor it keeps under, and shown you, not him, it will never show you him, but the place, the where, the thing the tosher gives the river's dead when he can, a where. The river has given you your father's where. And you know, standing there in the gray with the deep water breathing beyond, what the law requires, your own law, the one you have kept your whole life and never once turned on yourself. What was given, you may keep. What was taken, you leave.
You have been breaking it. You see that now, all at once and cold, the way the mud gives a coin. The key sewn in your seam, the worn coin beside it. You have called them kept, the unspendable wealth, the things worth more than a winter of beds, the 2 cold shapes your thumb has gone to in the mud, and the 4pence dark 10,000 times. But they were never the river's leavings. They were never given. They came to you out of the place where the river keeps your father, in the years just after, when you first went down the stairs alone, and the mud put 2 small hard things into a grieving child's hand, and the child sewed them into her seam and called it keeping. The key that opens nothing, the coin you cannot read. You have always told yourself they were his, and you were right, more right than you let yourself know. They are his, and the second law, your own law, the one you covered a stranger's ring to obey, has been waiting your whole life for you to say the words you have said over every lost thing but this one. What was taken, you leave. The dead are someone's father. You do not keep from the dead, even when the dead are your own, especially when the dead are your own. So you do the forbidden thing's opposite here, at the furthest edge of the bared flat, above the place the river keeps him. You reach into the seam of your coat, the worn lining, the 2 hard shapes that have lived there since the childhood ended, and you work them free, the long iron key and the worn smooth coin, and you hold them in your bare palm in the gray, the way he once held a shilling in his cracked warm palm and closed your small hand over it. And they weigh in your hand the weight of a whole life of keeping. And you understand that to keep them one more dawn is to do to your father what you would not do to a stranger, to hold a taken man's last belongings against his rest, to keep him lost so that you need not be the one who lets him go. You kneel. The mud takes your knees, cold, the way it once took a child's bare hand, and you lay the key and the coin down on the soft, dark bottom, gently, the way you laid your coat over the stranger, and you press them down into the cold until the mud closes over them and takes them back, gives them back to the place where it keeps him. A whole life's keeping, a winter of beds, the only warm thing you owned, laid down in the cold and left. It costs you everything. It costs you more than the ring, because the ring was a stranger's, and this is the last of your father, the last hard proof that he was ever warm and ever near and ever meant to come back. You leave it anyway, because the law is the law, and the law is the only thing that makes you different from the river, and the law says that what was taken you leave, and that the dead, even your own, especially your own, are owed the one thing you have spent your life unable to give him, to be let go, to be found and covered and left to rest by someone who was sorry, and you say the words, not inside this time, aloud, in the gray, in the cold, with the deep water breathing beyond and no living soul within a half-mile, the 4 words you have given to every lost thing the river ever handed you, said now at last to the one they were always for. I have got you. You are not lost anymore.
Someone has got you.
And then you wait. Not for him. You have stopped in the saying of it, waiting for him. That is the thing the words finally do. You wait the way you waited at the top of the stairs, but the waiting has changed its shape, and you cannot yet feel how. And the river far out stops its going, the slack, the strange still minute when the water holds its breath. And in the slack, in the great quiet, the river returns the only thing it ever could. It is not him. He does not come up the stairs. The shape does not rise out of the gray water. The warm hand does not come to rest one last time on the top of your head. You knew it would not. You have known since the top of the stairs that the certainty was a lie, the unkillable lie that let you sleep. What the river returns is not the lost thing. What the river returns is you, the small girl at the top of the stairs who has stood there your whole life waiting, who could not come down because coming down meant he was truly gone. The river takes the key and the coin into the place where it keeps him, and in the taking it lets her come down at last, the waiting girl, down the long flight of years to where you kneel in the mud, and the two of you become, in the slack, in the quiet, one person who has finally done for her father what he did every black morning for her, gone down into the cold so the other need not stay. He went down so you could stay at the top. You have gone down now so he can stop being kept at the bottom. And that is the whole of it. That is what the river returns, not the father, but the daughter, not the warmth you waited for, but the end of the cold of waiting. You rise from the mud. Your knees are cold and your seam is empty, and you have never in your life owned less than you own in this gray minute, and you are not, you find, less. You are lighter. The two hard shapes are gone from your side, and the place they lived feels not like a wound, but like a thing healed over, smooth, the way the coin was smooth, the way the mud goes smooth over everything it takes. The slack ends. The river turns far out and begins so slowly you cannot feel it, to come back, back across the bared flat, back over the soft dark bottom, and the key and the coin, and the place it keeps him. Gentle now, almost careful, folding the floor closed again over all of it, your father and his daughters keeping both, returned to the cold together, where they will lie, airless and lasting, as long as the river runs. And you climb, up the slope of the foreshore, ahead of the rising water, up toward the green stairs in the full gray, with an empty seam and a light side and a rag of coal for the ragman's scale, exactly as poor as you have always been, poorer, and warm somewhere under the cold, with a warmth that no wall gave you, and no bread, and no crowded room, a warmth given by the one act the river cannot do, and you finally could, to let a taken thing rest. You go up the green stairs the way you go down into sleep, slowly, feet first, reading the dark, and behind you the river closes over the place, and does not give him back, and never will, and you do not, this dawn, or any dawn after, look back. You have been the someone who was sorry. You have got him, and he is not lost anymore.
There is a room you will never see, 150 years from the dawn you knelt in the mud, and it is warm, and it is quiet, and it is the safest place the things you owned will ever lie. The river kept them after you laid them down, the long iron key, the coin worn smooth of its face. It kept them the way it keeps everything, airless and cold and patient in the soft dark bottom where it kept your father. And then, on some tide, the way it gives up everything in the end, it gave them up again. A later hand lifted them from the foreshore, a barefoot child, perhaps, reading the mud the way you read it,
or a man with a sieve and a permit 100 years on, when the gathering had a different name. The river does not mind which. It only gives, when it is ready, to whoever is cold enough or curious enough to be there at the ebb. And so they came, at last, to the warm room. They lie now behind glass, in a case lit soft and even, in the long quiet of a museum where no tide comes, a key that opens nothing, a coin no one can read. The small white card beside them does not know your name. It says only Mudlarks, Thames foreshore, late 19th century, which is to say it says someone, which is to say it says you. People pass the case, some stop, some feel, without knowing why, a small cold settling, and move on into the warm. The river is still out there, beyond the glass and the warm room and the lit city, running the way it ran the night you went down the green stairs, falling and turning and rising in the dark, keeping what it keeps. It is running now as you listen, and the key and the coin are warm at last, kept dry and safe and found in a room you will never see, which is only to say that the thing you spent your whole life waiting for came true in the end for them. They were lost, and now they are not lost, and someone, after all, has got them. Sleep now. The tide is turning. You may stop.